Let's play it again. Terraforming Mars, the solo variant. This video is a very quick reminder of how to play Terraforming Mars, the solo variant, and it assumes that you've already played it before and just need a reminder on how to play. To set up the board in the solo variant, you start on generation 14. Here I'm using the green color, and so I place my cube there on generation 14. We start with the generation marker on generation 1, the oxygen marker on oxygen is 0%, the temperature at minus 30 degrees Celsius, and we put 9 water tokens up here in the upper right. In the solo variant, we don't use the milestones or the awards. In the solo variant, we want to place 2 neutral cities and their adjacent greeneries. To do this, we start by drawing 4 cards from the deck. We'll then use their cost values to position the cities and greeneries. So for this first city, I'll use a count of 12. I will start at the top left and skip illegal spaces, but count 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and that's where I'll place the city. The count for the next city is 6, and I start at the bottom right and count 6, again skipping illegal spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. To place the greeneries, I do something similar, but I start at the top left of the city and go around clockwise, skipping illegal placement. The cities are neutral, and the greeneries do not increase the oxygen level. There is a special case that if you're using the Tharus Republic, you do get mega credits for the neutral cities. Once you finish setting up the game board, you can set up your player board. In the solo variant, you get 0 production for each of the resources. Next, it's time to shuffle the cards and the corporate cards. Notice that the backs are a little bit different. In the solo variant, you include the corporate era cards in the deck, so include them when you shuffle them together. Now, draw out 10 of the cards for your hand. If you're playing as a beginner, you can use the beginner corporation, so you don't need to draw the regular corporations. But if you're not playing as a beginner, you draw 2 corporate cards and get to decide which one that you're going to use. Take your cards into consideration when you choose your corporation. If you're using the beginner corporation, you get all 10 cards for free, plus you start with 42 mega credits. If you're using a standard corporation, then you need to pay for each of these cards 3 mega credits each. In addition, you will update your player board based upon what the card states. Here's a few important points to remember about cards. First, there are orange, green, and blue cards. Typically, you'll lay them out like this, and most commonly you'll have green cards, so you may actually have 2 stacks that you put out. The orange cards are event cards, so once you play them, you turn them over. The green cards are automated cards. They stay face up, and you let their tags be visible because they might be useful while you're playing the game. The blue cards are active cards. These can have an action each generation. Typically what you will do is you will place one of your player tokens on there to show when you have used that action, because you can only use it once per generation. It's important to remember that playing cards may have conditions. For example, to play the card on the left, you have to have an oxygen of at least 11. To play the card on the right, you have to have at least 2 cards with energy tags in play already. It's also important to understand about resources that have a red border around them. If they have a red border around them, it means that you can pay that resource from any player, including yourself. In the solo game, you have an anonymous player so that you can draw from that player. If the resource is in the production area, you must pay that resource. If the resource is not in the production area, you can optionally pay that resource. Now that you understand the cards, choose the cards that you want and your starting corporation, and you're ready to start. Here's a quick hint on how to play a faster version of Terraforming Mars. Say, for example, if you want to be within about an hour. Bump up the production values by 1. So in the solo game, instead of being 0, you can set them to 1. Then, when you increase your oxygen or your temperature, bump them up by 2. But you want to start at a little bit higher generation. So instead of starting on generation 1, start at generation 4. Give that a try and see how that works. Okay, so here are some quick things to remember as you play the game. So in order to play a card, you need to pay its cost. When you play an action, you can place your player token on there to show that the action has already been applied. Here are some things to remember about placing tiles on Mars. First of all, only oceans can be placed in the lightly colored blue areas. Secondly, cities can be placed anywhere except for they cannot be placed next to another city. When you place a tile on a space that has a card or plant symbol, you get that plant or card. When you place an ocean, it doesn't have any owner. But when you place a city, you put your marker cube on it. When you place a greenery, it needs to be placed next to some other tile that you own, if you own any. Then you place your player cube on it to note it as yours. When you place a tile next to an ocean, you get 2 mega credits. At the end, for final scoring, each greenery that you own is worth 1 victory point. Each city is worth 1 victory point per greenery, independent of whether you own the greenery. So here I have a city that gets 1, 2, 3 victory points. Once you've completed all the actions that you can, now go to the production phase. The first thing that you do is move all energy over to heat, then gain mega credits based upon your terraforming rating plus the production value of your mega credits. Then add resources based upon the production value for each of the resources. It's a good idea to use the resource cubes rather than the player markers to keep track of how much you have for each resource. Next, remove the player marker cubes for any of the actions that you use during that generation. Then finally, move up the generation cube to the next generation. Winning the game. In order to win the game, in the solo variant, you must completely terraform Mars by the time you get to generation 14, marked by solo. For your final scoring, start with what your terraforming rating is as your base value. Next, add victory points based upon cards that have resources assigned to them. Next, add up all the victory points at the bottom of cards that have those victory points and subtract the negative ones. Finally, you may have some cards that allow you to get victory points for Jovian planets, so add up the number of cards that have the Jovian planet tag. And there you go. That's how you play Terraforming Mars. I hope that video was helpful, and enjoy playing Terraforming Mars.